Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Armchair Reviews. My name is Chris Godden, your host, as always. Holy mackerel, we got a fucking banger for you guys today. It's been a big weekend. It's going to be a big weekend. A lot of things returning to us that I'm excited about personally. First of all, NFL's back. The NFL is back. Got the fantasy going. Already had the game opener on Thursday, which was kind of lackluster, but Sunday should be good. Lots of games coming back there. But that's secondary to what we're going to be talking about here today. I've been looking forward to the sequel for quite some time, pretty much since the first of, the series came out back in 2017, and James and I discussed it. Shout out to James. That's right. Today, I shall be talking about It Chapter 2. Oh man, I was so excited for this movie. When James and I first saw the remake, reimagining of It, we had such a good time watching that movie. Yeah, we had our issues, like minor issues with the film. I think it's episode 13 on the podcast here, but we had such a good time with it. It was so well done. The cast was phenomenal. Everything about it was just so enjoyable, especially for a horror movie. Like, walking out of it, I wasn't scared per se, but I just really liked how it was put together, and it's so uncommon for like a horror movie to have that effect. So pretty much as soon as it came out, we knew that a sequel was coming, and all the fan casting started coming out, and who is going to play the adult version of this, if they're going to mix it up a little bit from the book. And I'll be upfront, like I said in that previous episode, where I've never read the book. The book is like 1 billion pages long. I don't have that time, and as much as I love Stephen King, it's a lot to go through. And that book itself, what I have read about it, it's all over the place. There's so many intricacies with it, and obviously some of the stuff in that book can't be translated to screen because it's not so PC, bro. It does some shit that's absolutely bonkers. I'm looking at you, Losers Club and Sexual Encounter with Beverly. Yep, that's a thing. It's a thing, and it's probably very disturbing to read about, and I don't want to read that, so I'm going to skip over that. But It Chapter 2 finally came out. Spooktober came early. I'm going to credit my friend Kate here. She calls it Spooktember because, you know me with my Spooktober. I love when horror movies start like clustering around October and Halloween. It's my favorite time of the year. It really is. I love it. But this one came early. It came around the same time as the previous It, I think. The first It came out in September last time, and I even recall saying that it was the highest grossing rated R movie for the States. At least it was rated R in the States. I think it's 14A here in Canada, but for the States it was the second highest rated R movie for gross, like what it's earned total, next to Deadpool. So that was insane. But I digress. It Chapter 2, it brings back the original team of the kids. I think they included a lot of they shot a lot of the footage prior to including this one, but also whatever footage they had or they were going to reshoot with the kids, they had to like digitally re-age the kids to look like how they were when they first shot it, because a lot of them are going through puberty right now, and a lot of changes. So in order to keep that continuity, they had to de-age. It's kind of funny to say that they had to de-age like teenagers to look like what they were when they were like 13 years old. It's really kind of funny to me, but to keep that continuity and what they looked like previously in the other, like, I guess probably 3 years ago by now, but that's a huge time span for these kids. So now It Chapter 2, it brings back its original director, Andy Muschietti, and his sister, Barbara, helped produce it. So it's a nice little family combo that they're bringing us here. Again, you get Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise the Clown, or Pennywise the Dancing Clown, I guess clown, not cloud, you should say. James McAvoy is brought on as Bill, our lead of the Losers Club. You have Jessica Chastain as Beverly, Bill Hader as Richie, Isaiah Mustafa as Mike, who you probably recognize him most from the Old Spice commercials, like those really good ones before Terry Crews popped up on screen and shaking his tits for dollar bills. So ridiculous. Jay Ryan as Ben, James Ransom as Eddie, and Andy Bean as Stanley, the grown-up versions of the characters in the first one. And now, like the first one, those kids were great casting. They fucking knocked it out of the park. That was probably my favorite part of the movie, were those kids and their relationship that they had. They legitimately seemed like really close friends. Now, with the adult versions, like everyone started fan casting. Even the kid cast started fan casting who they would like to see as them. Funnily enough, 2 characters that the kids had fan casted for themselves actually end up in this movie. One being Jessica Chastain as Bev. I can't remember Sophia something. I don't have the kids' names readily available right now, but she had said she wanted Jessica Chastain as Bev, and sure enough, dreams do come true. She was cast, and as well as Finn Wolfhard. That, as you probably know, he's the one playing Richie in the first It, and he casted Bill Hader as his older self for Richie, and yep, he signed on. The other cast, they had some like the other fan castings of the kids they had were kind of a little outlandish, probably not probable. I think the most notable one that was kind of funny for James and I at the time was the actor who was playing Ben. He wanted Chris Pratt to play him because Chris Pratt's so hot right now. So hot. Chris Pratt. That would have been great. It obviously didn't work out. Jay Ryan is playing the adult Ben, and he does a great job. Like he's very handsome in and of himself. So, but everyone else here, like the entire adult cast, it is so well done. It is absolutely spot on. It's unreal. Like you can literally see the kids and their adult counterparts. That's who you would expect them to grow up to be. They look alike. They have the same mannerisms. It's so well done, especially like Finn Wolfhard and Bill Hader. They're probably like my closest to like what you'd expect like a younger Finn Wolfhard to grow into be. It's so good, and they play off like Bill Hader plays an older version of Finn Wolfhard's character so well, and that's what we talked about in the first episode with James. Like whatever the kids had done in that first movie, the adults were going to have such a tough time to fill those shoes. And it's insane to say that because obviously the older actors are probably more experienced, but those kids knocked it out of the park. They did so goddamn well in their roles. It was just really fun to see them. And so whoever you casted, whether it was fan casted choices or whatever, they had a lot to live up to. And I think my favorite part about this movie was the cast. They cast it so well. All these characters just absolutely killed it. What I will say is I think their relationship on screen, like as their friends as adults, is a little bit different. A little bit, it almost seems forced. But I'm not going to knock it too hard because, again, when you get down to it, these people have been separated for years. They've been separated for so long, like 27 years. I think that's when it resurfaces. It resurfaces every 27 years. So you don't really know what happens in the in-between. Obviously, they go on to move out of Derry, Maine, where the story takes place, Derry, Maine, the fictional town. So they go on to do their own stuff, and so when they come back, yeah, you get them laughing and stuff like that, and I'll get back to that in a second, but it eventually kind of grows on you, their relationship, but I think the kids had just such a more closer connection that you can actually see. You can literally physically see on screen that that they really do like each other, not just on screen but off. Like you can tell they hang out with each other or had hung out with each other before. Before I get into more details about the movie and all that good stuff, I just want to bring up a couple things here. So this movie is 169 minutes long. 169 fucking minutes long. Are you kidding me? For a horror movie, that is insane. I remember the OG, the original OG TV miniseries. It came in on like if you were to buy it, it was one of those special two set VHS collection things where the first half was on one VHS and the other one was on the second VHS. And you only saw that a couple times, I think, with like Titanic and shit, because it's just so long. But these new two are at least an hour total longer than the original one. And the 2017 I think it was like 2 hours 17 minutes, I want to say, something close to that. So that's long in and of itself. But this one coming in at freaking 2 hours and 49 minutes. That's so long. It's so long. I felt like I may have sprouted like probably my third gray hair watching it because it was so long. I aged that much. I'm not going to dock it for that, but you definitely start to feel the length of the movie while you're watching it in theaters. Like any movie that it's that long, you're going to start feeling it. Now, even though my attention was still captivated throughout it, it still kind of wore on me. I'm like, okay, let's get to the point here. Let's get to the point. I know where this is going. I know where the story goes. Let's just hurry up and get there. Again, coming from the source material that I had previously quoted as being like over 1 billion pages long, I get it. I can understand why it's this long. You have a lot of material to fit in, and even though they're as a group, they all have their individual stories that they need to encounter, and you have to include that. So I can understand why it's this long and why it's taking its time to kind of develop the story. So as much as like my attention span, it's pretty good. Like I don't mind watching long movies, but at the same time, you already know where it's going. Just you can cut out certain things, but that's all I'll say about that. I'll talk about the box office and budget now for these two real quick. The first had a semi like kind of smaller budget, I'd say, just because it needed to show what it could do, so its budget was $35 million. And as I said earlier, it broke box office records for the type of movie it was. It totaled, according to Wikipedia, very useful source, it had over $700 million earned from this movie. So it fucking killed. It killed, so to speak, at the box office. It did so well. People were talking about it. People loved it for good reason. I really like that first one. Now this one has a lot to live up to it. And that's where I will get into later, where you build that movie, you have that foundation, and you have a lot to live up to. I don't think this one necessarily did. I still really enjoyed it. But it's always the first ones, man. They do so well, and then everyone has these higher expectations, including myself, and it doesn't necessarily do as well as you would hope it would do, or hope it would include in the movie. This one, Chapter 2, had a budget. It over doubled its budget. It went up to $67 million, which still, on a blockbuster level, that's still not that much. I mean, I'd love to have $76 million to just throw around. However, I don't. But you can see they invested so much more into this one. And that may go to the casting, because the cast is insane, incredible, insane. So maybe that money was allocated to them, but also you can kind of see like the effects that were used. A lot more CGI was included in this, but again, I'm going to circle back to that. So far, I think there was some special screenings this past Wednesday, Thursday, before its release on September 6th, so yesterday and Friday. So far, it's already made... Oh, sorry. Okay, I messed up. my mistake. The budget was around 60 to 79 million, according to Wikipedia, but it's already made 76 million. It's already made that in a couple days. So by the final tally goes out after the weekend, I can almost guarantee it'll be in the 100 millions. And it's going to kick out anyone who was in the top spot of the box office at the time, which it's probably not that hard right now because I think only like small dog shit movies are out right now. So you have Angel Has Fallen. That only had this week only had 11.8 million. They're already beating it. They're already beating the living shit out of anything that came out. And anything that has come out this week, it's going to be second fiddle to it too. I guarantee it. I guarantee this movie is going to absolutely crush this week, next week, possibly even the one after, because of all the hype that it's been getting, the marketing, all that good stuff. So absolutely, they're going to do well. And I want to say that if there was more to the story, they would have had a sequel for sure, because people eat this shit up just like Pennywise eats kids. It's constant. All right, let's get into It Chapter 2 finally. Enough of this frivolity. Let's just get into it. I really like how this movie opened up. I should rephrase that, because it fucking opened on a goddamn hate crime. You have these two gentlemen, they're at a fair in Derry, and then they get absolutely shit kicked by a bunch of street youth. Fucking street youth at it again, ruining this goddamn country. They start beating the ever-living fuck out of these guys just because they're gay. Excuse me. They really take it to them, and they actually flip one of them over the bridge, or over a bridge into the rapids underneath. And the partner goes and tries to find him because he's obviously weary. The other street youth, they take off. Their little gang fucks off because they're a bunch of cowards. And once Buddy shows up, he finds him on the other side of the shore, who took him in and rescued him, but none other than Pennywise the Clown. He was the savior, only to take a fucking huge chunk out of the guy's chest. You see that effect they had in the first one, where his mouth just gets huge and open, sharp teeth come everywhere, and then just fucking jumps down, takes a huge chunk out of this dude. And that's the opening. You're like, oh shit. Okay, cool. I'm in for a ride here. I'm gonna have a good time with this. Meanwhile, Mike Hanlon, who's played by Isaiah Mustafa, he overhears this on a police scanner. He's the only one of the original Losers Club that has stayed in Derry. Everyone else is fucked off. And he goes to the scene. He finds some pop balloons, and then he walks around, and underneath the bridge, painted all in red, maybe you could assume it's blood, says, come home, come home, come home, come home. I think it's come home. And he's like, oh shit. It's about to get real again. It's happening again. All right. Well, I gotta get the crew and gotta get the club together again. So he goes on this giant mission. Giant, I say enthusiastically. It's a smaller mission. He just has to call a couple people. But he starts calling the Losers Club members one by one. So he's talking to all of them. You got to come back to Derry. We have a promise to fulfill. What bugged me about this, actually, was when he calls them, all he says is, for example, like, hey, Bill, it's Mike. And Bill, played by James McAvoy, he's like, who the fuck are you? Who the fuck is this? Who's Mike? Like, I don't know who this is. And then he says Mike Hanlon. I think that's the character name. And he's like, oh, how's it been? It's been so long, blah, blah, blah. But he does that over and over again to the other characters. He just introduces himself over the phone. It's a mysterious number that shows up. It's a random number. These characters don't have their cell phones at this time. Or cell phone numbers, I should say, in their phone. So it's just a random main number calling. So they pick up. And all Mike says every time, it's Mike. Yeah, Mike who? You think he'd learn after the first time that a little bit more of an introduction needs to be done. I know you were good friends in middle school or the fuck, but have a bit of a better introduction so you can overcome this awkward, hey, how are you? I know it's been 20 years. By the way, a clown's back and killing everyone. He actually doesn't say that, but he just says, come back here. We have things to do or whatever. He doesn't actually tell them that it is back per se. I don't think he does, because there's a reveal later when they actually do meet up that like, oh yeah, we got to kill this thing, and they're all like, what? I don't remember anything. So that's another good point where other than Mike, these people have all separated. They've all moved out of Derry. So quick background on what they're doing now. You have Bill, he's a famous author. His books are being turned into movies. However, everyone's shitting on him because his endings suck. And now that's a parallel to exactly what has been said about Stephen King and his novels. But Bill, his whole defense for that is like, well, like, there shouldn't be happy endings. This isn't the real world. Things don't happen as they should. It shouldn't be a happy ending. But he's still getting shit on. He gets a lot of critiques, plural, for that. But he ended up coming back. But he's very successful. So there's also Beverly, who is in the fashion industry. She's a fashion designer, but she's stuck in a abusive relationship with her husband. Once she gets the call, she has a fight, a pretty good scrap with her husband, and she leaves her ring behind. She's like, fuck this, I'm out. But she's successful. You have, let's see here, you have Bill Hader's character, Richie, who's gone on to be a stand-up comedian, which is very much in line with how his younger version of himself was ripping into people and being so quick-witted, and Bill Hader nails it. He throws up immediately after he gets the call because he's like, what the fuck? Why did I throw up? They don't know why they're so scared to come back to Derry. They just know that they have to because they made some sort of promise. But they're going to come back. So then you have Jay Ryan, who plays Ben. He is a very successful architect. Very successful, and he's lost all those baby fat pounds. He is a handsome mother lover. But he's kind of lonely. You can still tell he still carries around that yearbook page with Bev's signature, because that was the only person that signed his yearbook. Poor little Ben. You have James Ransom as Eddie, who is of course a risk analyst. He's a risk assessor for insurance companies and stuff like that. He was quite the hypochondriac in the first one. So he's successful, and it's pretty funny how you see his wife and who his wife is. It's a parallel. It's such an obvious parallel to his mother. It's kind of disturbing in that sense, but like the overbearing matriarchal figure. That's who he ended up marrying. And then you have Stanley, played by Andy Bean. He is now, if I check my notes, he's a very successful accounting firm partner. So they're all successful. They're all very, very successful after leaving Derry. And Mike, he himself has taken over the library, and he's actually living in like the clock tower, so to speak. So he's the only one that's stayed there. But they've all gone on to do such good things with their lives after removing this childhood trauma from their lives. So it's interesting to see where they're all at. After the call, Stanley, which we all knew was coming, he commits suicide. He slits his wrist in the bathtub. And no one else really knows about it other than Pennywise. He kind of takes the easy way out, but because it's revealed at the end of the movie that he knew he probably wouldn't be much of a help, and he thought he'd just slow the rest of the Loser Club down. So he just, quote, like he took himself out of the equation. It's still sad. Like you don't want to see that, but they also kind of gloss over it. They don't highlight it as much. There's only like a quick flash after he does it later on in the movie, where it's the kind of iconic scene from the miniseries of the 1990, where he's written it in his own blood on the side of the bathtub. So still eerie, but they kind of go over it. They kind of just brush by it. Although he's still his presence is still felt throughout the movie. But they all come back to, other than Stanley, of course, they all come back to Derry. They all meet at this Chinese food place. They all start catching up with each other and seeing where everyone is in their life. They're having a good time, and you can start seeing that the memories are starting to come back. Like it's slowly starting to come back, even though they don't know it. And this scene was good to see the adults' relationships come back together. You know, they've been separated for so long, but they're still joking, having a good time. You know, they're drinking. And this is one of the parts that it really frustrated me to see, because it's pretty good. They all get their, initially it's pretty good. They get their fortune cookies, they start opening it, and all it is one word, and they all start putting together, and finally they realize that it adds up like a Mad Libs game, where it's like, I guess Stanley couldn't make the cut, and then inside each of the bowl of fortune cookies, shit starts popping out of them, and it starts going haywire. These little creatures start popping out and like hatching almost out of these fortune cookies and start attacking them. And obviously it's all in their head, but the effects are so bad. It's so fucking weird how they choose to have these creatures. It's so distracting from what's actually happening. I don't know if it's on purpose, if it's supposed to be funny, or if it's supposed to be terrifying. I don't know. But like a little baby's head on like this fly creature, and like this one-winged bat out of like making like the fortune cookie fly and stuff. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I was not a fan of that at all. I was not. It had the right idea to have Pennywise fuck with them right when they all come back together, but the execution I felt it was kind of lackluster. But at this point, they're all like, oh, screw this, I'm out of here. A lot of them take off. I know, like, Ben and Bev, they go back to their hotel because they're going to leave. You have Eddie and Richie, they're like, fuck this, I'm out too. Which only leaves Mike and Bill, and Mike kind of convinces Bill to come back to his place to show him something, and that's where he takes a page out of fucking Joe Rogan's book and drugs Bill on like some DMT trip, explaining to him that like this Native American tribe, like the Chud, something like that, they told him how to kill it because their ancestors have encountered the creature before. And so so Bill goes on this giant DMT trip, and it's kind of like this exposition scene on how to kill this creature and how to contain it, trying to capture it or whatever. And so it's this giant Native American ritual where you put tokens into this container, this sacred container, something that you really identify with, and then you burn it, and then you chant some shit, and the deadlights, which is where Pennywise gets his power from, are supposed to go into this container. You seal it up, and Bob's your uncle. There you go. That's how you defeat it. So they go back to the place where they're all staying, like Mike and Bill, I should say. God damn it, I'm doing it again. I keep saying I should say. I did it last week. I need to stop saying that right now. I'm sorry. But they go back to the hotel or this Airbnb or this place where there actually is no staff, it seems, ever. It's only the main characters. And they try to convince the others that they need to stay, they need to finish this, they made a promise, all that good stuff. And Bev reveals that she had seen all of their futures, that they're all going to die when she was initially possessed by the deadlights in the first It. She says she's seen everyone die. She knew that Stanley was gonna be dead in a bathtub. That whole revelation comes out, and everyone gets really spooked. So eventually they sign on. They're like, okay, I guess we have to do this. The next day, they're like, okay, let's all go out in town in Derry. We need to get our tokens. So this whole movie pretty much spans just through, I want to say like 24 hours, maybe a little bit more. The initial gathering in Derry. I was going to do it again. Fuck, cut myself off. The initial gathering in Derry, it's over 24 hours. So they all split up and go on their search for their little tokens that they're going to use as a sacrifice for this ritual. Meanwhile, this other story going on where it flashes back to our favorite, most psychopathic bully, Henry Bowers. You kind of see his story where he gets flushed out of the whole drainage system because he fell down the well. Mike pushed him down the well in that haunted house type of thing. And he gets flushed out and he wakes up, and there's James and I were actually wondering about this in our first episode we did on it, where like, where these kids' bodies go? Oh, okay, I see. They all get flooded out of this one storm drain essentially, and there's body parts everywhere. And Henry wakes up in it, walks home. He gets arrested by police for the murder of his father, and I don't know if they actually charge him with the other kids' murders, but I think that's what happens in the book. And flash forward again to the present day where he is in a mental health institution. I think that's where he's being kept, and he's absolutely bonkers. He's lost his mind a little bit. He looks out the window and he sees a red balloon, and he starts losing it because he knows exactly what it is. It influenced him before to act even more of a douchebag and even more psychopathic, and he's totally drawn to it. It comes to him in the shape of Hofstetter, I think. That was his buddy who tried to use like an Axe can body spray and a lighter to defend himself, but was eventually murdered by it. And he escapes. He murders one of the other, I don't want to say inmates, but one of the other individuals that are residents, that have residence in this institution, and he escapes. So now you have a secondary villain who, again, in the book plays a lot more of a bigger role. I think they cut it down because there was already too much to go on, but he's definitely there, and he starts causing havoc with the losers eventually. His big scene really was when he just shows up at the, I'm just going to say the Airbnb that they're staying at, because it's not a hotel, it's just one of the places that they're all staying at. Has his knife, and he stabs Eddie in the face, like full blown right in the face through the cheek. And it's actually a really good scene. I really like this scene because Eddie is so dumbfounded about what just happened to him, and he just kind of like he walks backwards into like the shower, pulls the curtain as if to be like, no, this isn't real, this isn't happening. Equivalent to like pulling your eyes over your face with like a blanket while you're watching a horror movie. And then so Henry starts walking forward, and then you just see like this knife come through and stab Henry in the chest, and Henry escapes with this fucking chest wound, and Eddie's just starting bleeding on the face. And I just thought it was a really, as traumatic of a scene that it is for the character. It's just such a funny scene and funny reaction because, of course, that's so in line with how that character would react to it. I really liked how kind of awkward and amusing it was, but Henry doesn't really do a whole lot. Like he gets defeated pretty quick. Actually, eventually by Richie with like an artifact axe through the head. So he gets dispatched relatively easy. But I know why they had to include him, because he's such a big part of the main source material. But he's just another hurdle for them to jump over while they're out doing their thing and collecting their tokens. But they have a nice scene actually where the group, before all this happens, like I'm going back and forth here, but they have a nice scene where they're all trying to remember. They go to their old clubhouse, their losers clubhouse. That's where they find their first token, which they're going to use to represent Stanley. And it's a bunch of like hairnets so that they don't get like spiders in their in their hair. And that's a good scene too, because it flashes back to when they were kids as well. And Richie's like, "Who the fuck is going to wear this shit?" Cuts over to the rest of them in the Losers Club, and they're all already wearing it. So it was a nice little touch there. It sees how their relationship has come, where it's come, what it was. So it was really nice to see. And so they have their first token already. After they've seen the clubhouse and how like Ben built it. Excuse me. Like Ben built that clubhouse, and it's kind of like an underground bunker. But after they leave there, Mike decides, okay, we all have to go on our individual adventures because the token is specific to us. And I like how even Richie mentions it, where it's not the worst possible fucking idea to do. Like, it's almost like he's self-aware of how this happens in other horror movies. Like, you never should split up in a horror movie, but that's the thing that everyone does in every horror movie. They all go their separate ways. And Cabin in the Woods did this too. They had a little bit more of a different description or as to why, because they're all getting like drugged and influenced in a different way. But there's always that one person where it's like, no, that is so dumb. Why are we doing that? We need to stick together. We need to fight this thing together. But eventually they all go on their different paths. And that's where a good chunk of time in this movie is dedicated towards, is their own individual journeys to kind of find their old selves. So let's briefly talk about that then. You have Bev, who goes back to her old residence with her abusive father. She goes back there, revisits her old apartment, and it's an old lady that lives there now. And it's this is from like the trailer, one of the first trailers I think for it too, where it's just this creepy old lady, and there's clearly something wrong with her. She has like these long silences and staring, and she has like these weird scars on her chest. And meanwhile, Bev goes back and collects her little piece, which is her like this old postcard that she got from her quote unquote secret admirer, who she thinks is Bill. It's this poem that keeps coming back, but it was actually Ben that wrote it. And she collects it. She has tea with this old lady, and she goes back. The old lady goes back in the kitchen, starts fucking around there, while Bev starts looking at pictures, and she sees a picture of like Pennywise as like this old man. That was that was the lady's grandfather, so to speak. But it's obviously a fake history of who this old lady is. And she recognizes that person as Pennywise, especially since it says Pennywise the clown or some shit on an old like buggy, an old cart in that picture. And you see this old woman like doing like a jig, like crawling around. She's naked now. And then this is where again it really defeats the purpose of the build-up, because the build-up is so good, but then the payoff, it just ends up being like this giant fucking 17-foot tall naked witch with these like saggy boobs attacking Bev. And that CGI is just so poorly done. I think the effects were not great. Like that's my biggest pet peeve with this movie, is because it is good and it does have great intentions and it does have this great build up for these scenes, but the CGI is so distracting. It's so distracting when this person, when whoever gets in that situation where they're in peril. It's just kind of more comedic than anything. That's what I thought, at least. She ends up escaping and she sees like a vision, I guess, or a hallucination or whatever that Pennywise is putting on at the end of the hallway, where he's putting on his makeup and he's in like a human form, not just a clown, but he's putting on his clown makeup. And she escapes and she realizes that the building she just went in wasn't like a put together building or apartment building. It was just like this old, decrepit, abandoned building where the entire thing was an imagination or a hallucination that Pennywise had put on for her. But she gets her token, she moves on. Then we have, we have Ben, who went to his old high school or middle school or whatever. He collects his token, which is his page, or he uses the page of his yearbook to, to use as the sacrifice. But I think he already had that in his wallet, but he went back there anyway, just for shits and gigs. And he has a flashback, and this time the effects weren't so bad, because it cuts back to his younger self, and Bev turns into it, and he starts hiding in a locker, and it starts chasing him and stuff. So I actually really like that scene quite a bit, because it's really personal to him as well, because you have this person that character is so in love with kind of turn on him, and he knows it's not real, but still you can see it, like it hurts him that much more. But in his adult stage, I guess, he doesn't really have anything until later that affects him. But seeing that was kind of cool from his younger self, that he had that experience. Now you have Eddie, who goes to his old local pharmacy with a creepy pharmacist who has like these weird scarred face, and like the teenager, his daughter, like the pharmacist's daughter, still works there and looks identical as well. So great casting there. He gets his inhaler, which he was always fumbling with, and all his meds and stuff from the first one. And he has an hallucination where he goes down in the basement and he recalls another incident where the leper from the first one is attacking his mother. His mother's all strapped up. There's this leper that's all like just fucked up, like pus and ooze dripping out of him, and he's just the epitome of a hypochondriac, like pure nightmare. He starts attacking his mother. He has to leave his mother, and then as an adult, he sees the leper again attack him, but he actually puts up a good fight, and he almost sees a weakness in it. Because he figured that, okay, this is not real. I can do this. I can fight it. And you actually see the leper like shrink, and he was choking, and he did well. And before the leper just like vomits black goo all over him, and he fucking freaks out and takes off. But that comes back to play later on in the movie with how they actually try to defeat it. It's just so perfect, and his reaction, and then that's what leads to him being at the house and getting attacked by, I think, by Henry. But moving on, we have our lead. We have James McAvoy's Bill. He goes back and he gets his old bike, his old bike he finds in a shop, run by a special guest cameo from Stephen King himself as a shop owner, who kind of rips him off for his old bike. He pays $300 for it, and even chirps his character for not having good endings to his books, as he won't even accept an autographed copy for his book, or of a book that Bill wrote. But he's out riding around, and he comes across the old sewer that Georgie was taken from, and he starts talking to the sewer. Nothing really happens, and then of course he gets attacked by it. He gets grabbed, and a bunch of sort of like baby hands start grabbing him stuff. And again, effect's not so good. Has the right intention, would have been creepy, but the effect isn't great. And he scatters away from it, and he gets a token. He gets the same boat that Georgie and Bill created on that day that Georgie was killed or kidnapped or whatever. So that's his token. But he also sees a kid from earlier that Richie had accosted at the Chinese restaurant, which I forgot to talk about earlier. Maybe I've included it. I don't know. I can't remember. But Richie starts accosting this kid, thinking that he's an hallucination. Like, fuck you, little bastard. Get the fuck out of here. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. It turns out to be an actual kid in Derry. And he's just like, man, I was just a fan of your stand-up. Like, okay, bye, I guess. But Bill comes across that kid again, and he's skateboarding, he's doing his thing, and he's on his way to the fair in Derry. And Bill's like, get the hell out of here. You got to leave. Just take your family. Just you got to leave here unless you want to die. And that kid is living in his old house. And this scene, all I could think about during this scene are direct parallels to Billy Madison. He literally grabs the kid. You know when Billy Madison grabs the chunkier child, grabs him by the face because the kid is saying that he wants to go to high school. He can't wait to be older. And Billy Madison grabs him by the cheeks and starts shaking him like, no, stay here as long as you can. Don't grow up. So Bill does that to this kid, essentially, not grabbing the cheeks, but grabs him by the shoulders and starts having this freak out where it's like, you have to leave. Leave as soon as you can. Just get your family out of here. And the parallels between it are so funny. I couldn't take that scene seriously. And it's funny to see the kid's reaction where he's just like, what the fuck? Okay, crazy man. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Bye. Because of course, he doesn't know this guy. He doesn't know anything. He's just a stranger on the street with an old rusty piece of shit bike talking to a sewer. Of course that kid's going to have that reaction. He's a goddamn millennial, for Christ's sake. I just thought that was a really funny bit. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but it really had an effect on me where I was just laughing from it. Like, I know it's a terrifying little warning that Bill's trying to give this kid, but really funny. And honestly, man, little boy Dean should have listened, because he gets murdered shortly afterwards, like Bill goes on a hunt for him after he meets up with everyone at the Airbnb, and he's just like, screw this, I'm out. I have guilt towards Georgie dying. I gotta save this kid at least. He ends up in a funhouse of mirrors, and Pennywise corners him. The kid, I should say. Did it again? Fuck. He ends up cornering the kid and just devours him in front of Bill as almost like a fuck you to Bill. So you can't save anyone. Here's what I can do. But they all end up getting their tokens, and they all go back to the house where it all started from, or that's where the well is, and they all get split up like in threes. Ben starts getting like something carved in him. I can't remember what it says specifically, but he starts getting something carved on his stomach, like kind of a flashback of how Henry was carving something on his body initially in the first one. And then Eddie, Richie, and Bill all see a dead version of younger kid Stanley in the fridge, the same fridge that Pennywise crawled out of to attack them. And the decapitated head rolls out of the fridge, and it turns into this grotesque like spider creature and starts attacking them. Eddie freezes up, but eventually they subdue it, which I really like that scene because it's so the effects for that weren't that bad, but it's just so like disturbing because you're fighting a younger version of one of your best friend's heads with spider limbs coming out of it. And so it really is, it is unsettling to say the least. But anyway, they all go to the house. They all go down into the hole, and this is where like it ends up building into the giant climax. I skipped over a couple things here, just for the sake of time. I don't want to summarize everything. Before we get to that, though, I want to talk about another scene that was actually, I really like it because it shows how manipulative Pennywise can be. It's earlier on in the movie where he seduces this younger girl. She has a facial scar, so she's obviously uncomfortable with that, and it's kind of a weak point that Pennywise latches onto. But cause she's initially right. She's like, no, fuck you. She's at a baseball game, and she follows this firefly, and she really likes it. She doesn't want to be at the baseball game with her mom. Her mom's lacking attention. She starts following this firefly underneath the bleachers, and it leads to Pennywise. Pennywise is in the shadows, and he's trying to lure her into it. And she's like, no, dude, you're fucking weird. You're in the dark, and you obviously are bad news. So he starts walking away, and then he starts promising her that he can make her facial scar like disappear, or her birthmark or whatever. And she starts coming closer because of this fake promise, and she's just so innocent. Like, you feel bad because you know where this is going. She's just so innocent, and you can literally see Pennywise salivating, and he has that gross like drool off his like big bottom lip, and then all of a sudden just he just devours her whole, just like he did to the little boy Dean there that Bill was trying to rescue. But I really like that scene. It's because you don't actually see it, but you see like his mouth just like get huge all of a sudden and just chomp down, and then it kind of cuts away to like the empty bleacher, or the underneath of the bleacher, and it's all dark still. It's like, oh man, that's brutal. Like, he's such a piece of shit for like feeding on children, but that's what he does. Oh, I really like that scene because again, it's just terrifying that he's feeding on these poor people. But getting back to the climax, it shows that they're all together. They're about to do this ritual. They're starting to do it. It goes wrong. Pennywise comes back. He's this giant figure, like mainly from the torso up. He's still like human, but his arms, and he has these arms are like scythes, and his legs are like spider limbs, which is a lot better of an effect than the original 1990 version, where he's just like this stop motion clay animation spider. So at least they updated it well in that regard. But he starts chasing them around, and they're kind of shell shocked because like what initially happens, they get the deadlights in the container, like the Native American container. I should probably say container one time. Yeah, so it's a Native American container. But then before they can get it closed, this giant red balloon starts forming and then pops. And it kind of blows everyone back. And I like how they had, it's almost like this World War II effect where everyone has that they can't hear anything, but it's that loud ringing sound that they hear, and they're all kind of like confused as to what's going on, as if just this big blast happens. So I like that effect. But Pennywise is not to be defeated and starts chasing them around, and they eventually kind of like find cover or whatever. They each go into their own like personal hell, pretty much, that Pennywise has concocted for them. Like Bill goes, like he dives into water to avoid Pennywise, but he ends up being in his basement, his flooded basement, with his old self and Georgie, which I kind of like that scene because it shows him like kind of puppeteering an older version of Georgie eventually, which I really like from the first movie. You don't really, it's a quick little thing, but you don't really see it, but you can see Pennywise using a dead version of Georgie as like a puppet. And it shows that in this one that Bill is kind of doing that, and he's talking to his younger self. So that was a good scene. I like that. And then it shows Ben in the clubhouse, and the walls start caving in. He starts getting buried alive. Beverly is in like this old, like her old middle school washroom, and blood starts filling in with it. So she's about to drown. They end up saving each other, and then you have Richie and Eddie. I can't remember what happens to them, but Richie gets caught in the deadlights. It was really funny when he does get caught in it, because he just goes like in this like cartoony like pose where his feet kind of go like in towards each other, like pointing at each other, like pigeon toed, and his arms just like dropped in front of him, like dead weight. Eddie ends up saving him by throwing like a spear, like this javelin or this fence post, not post, through Pennywise's mouth. Kind of defeats him for a second because he ends up getting knocked back and getting impaled, but he's like, Richie, I did it. He saves Richie from the deadlights, and then of course he's like, I did it. Anytime you have someone that's so elated of their accomplishments in these movies, he gets immediately like stabbed to the chest with one of like Pennywise's like scythe hands, and he stays alive for a little bit, but he does end up passing away. But fast forward a little bit, and they can't escape. They try to lure Pennywise out because he has to shrink down in order to leave the area. He has to follow by these certain rules of like the body that he's in. But then Mike comes up with this realization where like there's other ways to make people feel small. And so they just start verbally assaulting Pennywise and like attacking his insecurities, which is really funny because it actually starts having an effect where they're just like, you're not real, you're small, you're just a clown, you're nothing, you ain't shit, boy. And he starts shrinking until he's like this little baby clown. They rip his heart out, and eventually the deadlights kind of like disappear or whatever. But kids, this just goes to show that words hurt, okay? Even if you're an interdimensional space clown from hell, words hurt. And they hurt you more than sometimes physical pain, okay? That's the important message of this movie, okay? Words hurt, guys. It's so corny. It's so fucking corny. Especially because like the Losers Club almost become a villain. You know, they have that villainy in them where like they were bullied and now they're literally having that same behavior that tormented them when they were younger in order to utilizing that in a way to defeat this clown that feeds on fear. I just thought it was so corny. So corny. It's absolutely insane, but it ends up being a happy ending. They figure it out. Unfortunately, Eddie passes away, so 2 of the 7 original Losers Club members all die. Now, before wrapping up here, there is a nice moment that I wanted to talk about. They all go cliff diving again at their initial cliff diving spot afterwards, and they're cleaning themselves off because they're all like scraped to shit and have gunk on them or whatever, and it focuses on Bill Hader's character Richie, and they're kind of remembering Eddie at that time, and Richie just starts breaking down, and it's a really nice scene. Like it's very sad, and you can really feel the emotion. Like that was, it really did feel like gut wrenching that he just lost someone that he really loved. Like even though him and Eddie had like a back and forth where they're always chirping each other and making fun of each other, like you know that friendship was so deep, and they really did care for each other. And to see Richie finally like break down like that in this moment of calmness, it was really nice. It was a nice little touch, and I'm glad they included that. And then you also have Bev's realization that she figured it out, but now it's settling in where Ben was the one that wrote the poem that she's been longing, like really had an effect on her, that a nice person could really actually like her and appreciate her. And she realizes this, and they share a moment. They start a romantic relationship. So it's nice to see that, like, oh, because throughout the movie, you can see it's haunting Ben the entire time. He's still really hurt that she thinks it's Bill. And there's so many times where he's wanted to tell her and he didn't have the opportunity, or he had the opportunity but it was taken away really quickly. I'm glad that they have a happy ending. Everyone's ending is pretty much it is happy. It is a happy ending. Mike moves on from Derry. Everyone leaves, and they're all still close. They all go on to do their own things. So it was a nice way to finish it up. But just like that climax with instead of just beating the living fuck out of it like they did in the first one as kids, they verbally assault him. I thought that ending was really cheesy, and I mean, it is what it is, but whatever. I don't really have much else to say. There's nothing else that really stood out for me in this movie. Like, again, it's 2 hours and 49 minutes. I know I glossed over the main things, but I talked about what I wanted to talk about here, I think. And again, I really liked this movie. I did enjoy it. I just didn't think it was as put together as the first one. The first one was really good, and this one, at times, it could feel a bit disjointed. I know they're trying to work with multiple timelines of when they were younger and now when they're older, and trying to piece that together and including all those little things. But I'd still say like at least 7 out of 10, like easily 7 out of 10, especially for a horror movie. But I'd probably go back and watch the first It sooner than go back to this one whenever it comes out again. That's not to say, like, again, for a horror movie, like it is good, but the CGI is really distracting, and like certain corny bits, it is distracting. So all in all, definitely go check it out. If you're a fan of this series and the source material, definitely go see it. It's definitely worth a watch. Just my favorite part easily is the casting. They all do so well, and they all epitomize what their younger versions of themselves portrayed in the first one, and they all look very similar as well. Like they're just spot on. And of course, I got to give kudos to Bill Skarsgård for maintaining the creepy clown formula, because he does such a good job as Pennywise. He is Pennywise. Whenever he's in the scene, for the most part, he's stealing that scene as Pennywise. It's so good. His eye trick is crazy. Like, his mannerisms are insane. Just such a good job. I think that's it. I think that's all I have to say about this one. I'll probably come back to it eventually. And maybe I'm forgetting a couple things here, but I feel like that's natural for this length of movie. I'm going to remember things that I should have wrote down as notes, but I didn't. But that's it. That's it for It Chapter 2. Go check it out, guys, if you're interested in this stuff. Now, this is where I usually talk about what I've recently been watching or want to watch. The one thing that I got turned on to immediately after this movie I started checking out was a new series by HBO. I think they're already done their first season, but I'm catching up now with it. Was a show called Barry. And it, of course, features Bill Hader. I was talking to a friend of mine, and she reminded me, like, oh, fuck, that's right. That show exists. I should probably watch that. And it's a dark comedy mixed with drama. So a dramedy, would you call it? I think it's a dramedy. It's so good. It's like 30-minute episodes, something like that, and it's all based around this character Barry, who is an ex-military man who comes back to the States, and played by Bill Hader, and he becomes a hitman, and he has a handler, and he comes across this mark. He's hired by the Chechens to kill this one actor guy who's been sleeping with one of the Chechens' wives. And he's like, yeah, no problem. I can get it done. Like, how do you want it done? I'll do it, whatever. Goes to this acting class and he gets pulled on stage inadvertently with the guy. And he's just so bad at acting, but he likes the crowd response. And so he kind of goes through this whole like midlife crisis where he's like, oh, fuck this. I don't want to be a hitman anymore. I want to be an actor. And he gets closer and closer with his acting group and starts developing himself. But that has an impact on what he had signed up for initially, was to kill this dude. And he pisses off the Chechens, and mayhem ensues. I'm only on like the third episode, I think. I don't know how many episodes are in the first season, but I know there's a season 2 already coming out soon. So it's definitely worth a watch. It's really funny. I mean, it's HBO. You can't really go wrong with HBO, but Bill Hader in it is super good in it. Like I'm a big fan of Bill Hader. I'm on a Bill Hader bender right now, apparently, that I got myself into inadvertently, but definitely check that out. But as opposed to with regards to anything else, I know there's a new season of Archer on Netflix that I started watching as well. It's been pretty good. I like how they're just taking the characters and throwing them into different types of genres, and they're not keeping with like the main storyline anymore. It's funny to see those characters react. Like this one, it's like in a space adventure, so it's really kind of fun. But yeah, that's it for this episode, guys. I think we wrapped it up. I think that's it for episode 59 here. Just want to say thanks again for listening and putting up with my solo bullshit. I know it's a little bit more tough. I'd rather have someone to bounce off ideas of, but it's the way of life here now. I'll try to get some guests on, some work buddies and stuff like that are interested in doing this stuff and have their opinions, so I'm not the only speaking head, because even I get tired of listening to myself. So thanks again for listening. If you want to email the show, you can email the show here at ohmygoddenaudio@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram. My own personal one is Christopher Gods, and the show email is @armchairreviews. You can find the episodes on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, on Pippa. The audio goes out to YouTube as well, so there's a plethora of ways to listen to the show. Yeah, that's it. Until next week, guys, I appreciate it. Hey, we floated on by, no problem. Until next week, bye-bye.